Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Hard Things Podcast. This is your host, Blaine Burgess, and this is a special episode for several reasons. We have episode 37. It's going to be called Eyes Wide Shut, and it's the last episode of 2024. 2024 was the year I decided to start recording a podcast, and I've had views, listens, whatever you want to call it, all over the world. It's not like a massive podcast. It doesn't generate any money. But again, it's just a kind of a personal diary and also just a place where I just share, kind of the raw side of life. You have, Instagram and, TikTok and all these different social media outlets that kind of show the highlights. And I like to think that this show is a bit of a combination, highlights and lowlights. You get to see a whole person, for who I am. And everything I went through in 2024, I talked about a good amount of it. Some of it I didn't talk about. It's a very, very challenging year, but I find myself at the end thinking to myself, as difficult as this year was, and, everything that could have gone wrong, some of it went wrong, some of it didn't, and went actually very well. So, today's episode is going to be about presence, and seeing things for what they are and what they could be, and understanding that we don't always know what something means. We don't have enough context. Hindsight is 2020. So you're not going to know if you're making the right decisions now until later, but you can develop kind of that sixth sense in a way and kind of feel it out. You're using a combination of what your mind knows and what your heart feels to forge the path forward. And the more that I do that, the more I surrender to that process, the better my life goes, the happier I am with outcomes. Overall, I can't stress it enough. So I'm going to start with just a story about New Year's. And so New Year's, 2021 or 2. Can't exactly remember. Let me, what's going to be 23, 22. So 2021, yeah. Kind of doing the math on that, it's a little bit difficult. But I had found in my life, for one reason or another, that New Year's was always this night where I put an increased amount of pressure on myself to either, have a date, or maybe I was dating someone, and just to make that night extra special for whatever reason. People put some importance on drinking, being out at a bar, getting a New Year's kiss. And, I'm 34 now. If I look back at all the New Year's I've been alive, most of them I was a kid and having a blast at some, house party where the parents are drinking in the basement or whatever. And then as I got older, you go from a kid to a young adult, you start hanging out with, other teenagers, you get your license, you start driving around. And man, I had, for the most part, really good New Year's Eve experiences. I mean, I always had friends around, and I guess 2021, I just challenged the notion of like, why do we do? I mean, we just do this because we all decide that. We decide it's the end of the calendar year, and I can get into all the reasons why, but like, I just thought to myself, like, I don't need this. I just moved to a new city, and Texas has great state parks, and I just decided to camp. I went camping for New Year's 2021, and leading into 2022. And this is probably about 2 years after a true kind of spiritual journey had started for me. I mean, 2 to 4 years. It was a very slow process. But yeah, we'll say, 4 years in, just for sake of argument or whatever. Um, and this for me was a huge step. I just departing from the norm and hopping into this kind of strange new thing. I'm like, hey, if I really like this, maybe I'll just do this every year. And then if I have people that want to join, they can join or whatever. But getting out in nature on New Year's, just kind of a strange idea, and I didn't really have anything to lose. So again, I was in a new city. I had friends, but they were doing the traditional stuff, and I didn't necessarily want to drink alcohol or make a mistake. Go kiss someone's girlfriend or sleep with someone I don't need to. So yeah, I camped out, and what was interesting about that, taking on that particular challenge, just my own value and society's value, what we put on New Year's, and then just going against that, it gave me this like strange confidence. And a few months later, I had made I finished my initial cut from around 320 pounds down to 240 for a weightlifting meet in March. And in that time period too, I had just met like a really close friend of mine, and that friendship was growing. So it gave me confidence, and my social life in 2022 exploded after kind of undertaking this New Year's experiment. And I think it was just this earned confidence. I did something a little bit outside the box, and I came back with a different perspective. And people can see it written all over you when you have that type of confidence. So I say all that to say that what otherwise I kind of was taking as a negative experience was something that challenged me and ultimately made me better. And I had a better year that year in 2022, I believe, because of that challenge. So again, we never know how things are going to turn out. And in the moment, it might seem like the absolute end of the world. But I think our choices, definitely play into it. But our destinies are largely cultivated, outside of our control. There's little choices we can make inside of it, but to think that we have that much influence on the outcome is just overstating our abilities, and in a way that's freeing, because it's not all on you to make it go. You have to work and put an effort into what you're doing, but just knowing that the result is as much reflective as your work as it is like the needs of the society, and also just this random kind of spiritual human force that we have, the collective soul. If you put everything into a business and the product isn't something that anyone needs, it's not going to go very well. And the pure fact is that people don't need it. And maybe they don't need it right now. Maybe they don't need it ever. And that's just how it is. That's economics, to a T. So, speaking of that, so really this episode's about taking your eye off the ball, in a way. It's like, for me, again, New Year's was a challenge, and that challenge was the ball. I kept my eye on the ball, did the challenge, earned some confidence, had a great year after that. And since then, I've taken on all kinds of challenges that have led to, wins and losses in pretty much equal amounts, in concert. And again, like, I've ended up in a place where, like, the only way you lose is if you don't take a chance, because you're going to take losses. If you're afraid of the losses, you're never going to get the wins. So again, the title of the episode is Eyes Wide Shut. That's kind of about keeping your eye on the ball, focus kind of being the word here. So there's kind of two movies I watched recently that brought up, interesting themes. So one was Inception. So if you know anything about Inception, there's a lot of theories about what's going on. The theme of the movie is dream within a dream. People basically go spelunking in your dreams to steal your thoughts and your ideas. But Inception is actually putting an idea in someone's head while they're dreaming that then becomes something they might act on when they're awake. So it's idea theft and idea, giving. So sparing you a whole summary of the movie, it's kind of just, in my mind, indicative of, so the main character is Leonardo DiCaprio, and he gets really focused on his work, and he pushes and pushes and pushes, and him and his wife go to kind of the edge of what's possible in the dream world. And because he wants to know the answer so bad, he ends up compromising his wife, and she commits suicide in the real world based on an idea that he gave her. So because he wanted to go so deep professionally, he ignored the fact that the most important thing in his life is him and his wife here and now, their kids. And at the end of the day, you can push for more, but everything you need just might be right in front of you. And this is also indicative in the movie Eyes Wide Shut. It's the kind of the title film, so to speak, of this episode. But Tom Cruise is a guy whose wife has a bit of a crisis. She gets flirted with heavily at a party, and he's heavily flirting with two young models. And the film's all about desire and marriage, and I think it's something that we all wrestle with, the want for like stability and functional, partnership, but also just the need to be desired, to feel desirable, and it's definitely a balance. And I think sometimes traumas from our past cause our needs to grow beyond what's possible for one person to meet. And I think that's where a lot of people in our society are these days, is we have this infinite choice. There's a thing called the paradox of choice, that basically the more choices you have in, say, like a supermarket, you get like 18 ketchup options. When you get the Heinz eventually at the end of the shopping trip, as you should, if you get any other brand, you're wrong. You are going to feel dissatisfied with the Heinz because you're going to think maybe I made the wrong choice. And I think as human beings, it's similar. Back in the day, it used to be there was maybe a village or a city, and, the most eligible bachelors were around, and then they would kind of get scooped up by the most eligible bachelorettes, and then, the hierarchy of people would end up kind of easily fitting in with each other. But what we have now is this insatiable, like, rush that you get from climbing, like social climbing. So there's still a hierarchy, but we're obsessed with the idea that we can do better. Men and women both, I think. And I think the only way to combat this is to just bring yourself back down to earth and realize what really matters. And I've been lucky enough to find what I understand as, love, several times in my life. And each time I learn a little bit something more about what love is. And I think the reason divorce rates are so high now is because people aren't dating long enough and dating seriously enough. You got to date people as if you're going to marry them, even though you probably won't, which is weird. It's a very weird paradox. But that's how you would have to operate if you eventually want a marriage that's going to, have a better chance to work. So getting back to the dating is the only way to combat it is like to use your heart. Um, Again, like trust your feelings, trust also what the person's doing, but also know that feelings are complicated. Their actions, it's like this combination of thoughts and feelings that's going to guide you. And it's really a skill that I've had to learn kind of the hard way. And I'm glad I have this skill now. But I think it's the only way to operate to combat this endless need for climbing, because we always think we can do better. And to be completely honest, it's not about how attractive that person is or how much money they make or who their family is. Like, if that love is real, and you believe like you see the best version of that person, it's your job to love them and push them to that level, and I've done that with people and they haven't wanted to go there, and you can't force them. And when they kind of back out or tap out and say they've had enough, then you have to, let them go. And wish them the best, and, just hope for humanity's sake that they figure out their gifts and that they go all the way. But that's also countered with the warning from Inception. Sometimes there is such a thing as too far, and at the end of the day, like, the enemy of great is good, but the enemy of good is also great. So you can have a good marriage that works, and you have good children, good family, and kind of keep the train rolling. And there's romance and there's love, and it lasts, and everyone's genuinely happy. Versus, you get that maybe person that's like one rung higher, but it's not going to last. They're going to pay for a lot of vacations or big houses or cars or whatever, and you're going to be happy for 5 years, but then you're going to be miserable for 20. Because now you're going to be older, you're going to have less to offer in the dating pool. And one thing I've learned about the dating pool is it's unforgiving. When you're at your peak value, that's when you have to date the most and also be the most discerning and careful and just tuned in. You got to be tuned in to what you're doing. But back to Eyes Wide Shut. So that movie, basically his wife reveals that she's had fantasies about cheating. Apparently she never had, but she had thought about it. She kind of wanted him to be jealous. And then she sets him off on a path of jealousy, and he goes down several just strange happenings, as only Stanley Kubrick could illustrate. Kind of like The Shining, if you've ever seen that. Strange series of events that were just perfect for him to feel emasculated, to the point where he basically goes to this secret society, sex party with masks and capes and all this crazy stuff. And obviously not supposed to be there, gets in with a password, and everyone there knows that he's not, he came in a taxi, like he clearly doesn't belong there. And it's super dangerous. But his wife's infidelity, and just in her brain, along with several other chain events, led him to go down this wild path. Now, I think as men, it's really difficult because women do have so many options, and we know how dangerous it is. I kind of vibed with the main character. I understood, like, as a man, the thing that I love the most in a partner is when they are just so excited to be with me. If we're connected in that way and they're actually genuinely happy to be there, nothing better for me. I love to take care of that person. And in today's world, unfortunately, there's just less and less of that available. And maybe that's been the case in the past too. And I just, obviously wasn't in the dating pool. I don't know. But I think technology hasn't done us any favors in terms of split attention. So I say all of that with the optimism of again, the skills I've learned, the way I've learned to use my head and my heart in concert and be discerning and really dig deep. If there's a person that you feel a certain way about, you got to give it everything you got until it's gone. And when it's gone, you just got to go with grace, which is genuinely super tough. But all of that requires that discerning eye of just being able to make a decision, the best decision that you can make in that moment with the information that you have, and just keep working to get more information and make better decisions through the chain of that path of a relationship or a job or whatever it may be. I think it's the highest goal that we can have, because ultimately, if we get better information and make better decisions, that's going to lead to better situation for us, for our community, and our families down the road into the future. And the more people that can do this collectively, I think the better off we'll all be. And there's always going to be those who fall by the wayside, but if I have anything to say about it, I will definitely be advocating for peace and happiness, and making the tough decisions now that are gonna put you in a position for the best possible outcome, and knowing that you can still lose, but it was the best thing you could do. So 2 observations. So one is I played a little bit of blackjack over the holidays, and when you play blackjack, you can ask the dealer, there's a quote unquote book that tells you, based on what the dealer has and based on what you have, what you should do. If you should hit, stay, double down, fold, whatever. There's just rules that you can use if you want to, and they generally make sense. Gives you the best odds to win. And again, feelings, especially when it comes to gambling, are pretty much irrelevant. I think when it comes to people, very relevant, but games of chance, not so much. And that's where they get us. But I say all of this because your heart might be just screaming at you to take a hit on a 16, for example, against a 10. But a lot of people would tell you, it's probably 50-50. People would tell you to hit or stay, and you need a 5-4 or less to get 21 or less, because you don't want to go over, which is tough. And there's not as many of those cards in the deck, so the odds are that it's not going to happen. But I've hit it before and gotten a 4 and beat the dealer, so there's still a chance. There's always a chance. So again, like I was talking about, just give yourself the best chance to win, and just know you can still lose. And really, the house always wins. By the house, I mean the universe, karma, whatever you want to call it. The house always wins, and we're going to take some L's. But knowing that just kind of frees you up to do your best. And again, work really hard. So making the best decision possible and working hard and doing, what's required, rather than just kind of saying, I was screwed anyways, so what does it matter? And not going for it, because that's the coward's way out. The final thing I'm going to say about focus is I've also been spending time with my young niece and nephew. So they're 2 and 1, respectively. And it's this fascinating thing that they do. They watch YouTube videos of Roombas. And so I say this to say that kids, one of my favorite gurus says that children are the closest to God. They were just born. They haven't had the traumas of life put on them yet, necessarily. So the things they do, so that there's part of it, which is they may throw fits or tantrums, and that's kind of natural and kind of the primal way that they get their needs met. And they don't necessarily have the full use of the English language to communicate, but they communicate in so many ways. literally with just a look, just body language alone, and a smile, I can tell exactly what they're thinking. So you just got to pay attention. But um, what they do is actually decently elegant, in my opinion. So you might see a kid cry and be like, they're just a kid, and then you just write them off. But I'm watching them watch the Roomba video, and there's a lot of wisdom in the Roombas. Like, so this guy will get on there and he'll dump confetti on the floor, and then these Roombas will battle to pick up the confetti. And then when all the confetti is gone, the guy takes the confetti out of the Roombas and dumps it back on the floor. And this just reminded me of Sisyphus. It's an old myth where this guy was sentenced to life rolling a rock up a hill. And when the rock got to the top of the hill, it just rolled back down, and then he had to do it again. So kind of like a hell purgatory type feel. And that's what the Roombas were like. And I just realized, the old me, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, I'd be like, man, I don't want to watch this. I'd rather watch just about anything else. I want to watch what I want to watch. It's a little bit selfish, maybe, and also just maybe not liking the fact that I'm being reminded that existence is kind of futile. That the confetti gets dumped back on the floor, and you got to pick it up again. It's like life's a little bit like playing 52 pickup to bring the cards back into it. If you take a deck of cards and throw it everywhere and pick it back up, the odds are at some point that deck's going to get spilled and you're going to have to pick it up again. And that's life in a way. You get things together and then things fall apart and you got to pick it up again. And so I'm sitting here watching this Roomba video, having all these deep thoughts and just thinking to myself, like, who on earth have I become? This is just a really interesting thing. But I say all that to say that the kids love watching the Roombas, and I think it's partially there was music to it. There's just the sound of the Roombas. It's kind of soothing to hear that low vacuum noise. But then I was thinking, adults do this all the time. We rewatch movies that we know the ending to. Our favorite movie, you watch it 100 times, and you know the ending, and it's comforting because it's something you can control. You know what's going to happen. And with these Roombas, I know the guy's going to empty the confetti out, and I know the Roomba's going to pick it up again. So how can we apply that to our life? It's just like, what do you focus on? Well, in the moment, am I the Roomba picking up the confetti, or am I the guy dumping the confetti out? Or what part in the process am I at? And what can I get done today? I think that's what I would leave you with today is don't focus so much on the fact that the confetti is going to get dumped out again while you're picking it up. Just do it. Do the job. Do the work. If you need to, pick a different job. Change whatever you're doing. You don't have to do the same thing over and over forever. That's insanity. But there's going to be some version of a Roomba and confetti that you're having to do. And the more that this Roomba confetti deal is avoiding your eventual destiny, like for me, working a decade in sales when I'm supposed to be a chiropractor. Now that I'm in chiropractic school, I know for a fact that this is for me. I just feel like I belong there. I'm getting good at the basically everything to do with the school, and I enjoy the content, and I'm going to enjoy working with people and helping them out. But for that 10 years, I was the wrong Roomba picking up the wrong confetti. And if I could have seen that a little bit sooner, which may or may not have been possible, maybe I'd be a chiropractor a little sooner. I'd get a couple extra years of doing my life's work. Just saying, there were signs. There's a reason I admired chiropractors. There's a reason I was at companies like Whoop and Thorne that were kind of chiropractic, nervous system adjacent. my interests have always been beating around the bush of chiropractic. And maybe I knew in some way that I wasn't ready for it. Maybe, whatever. I can say maybe. At the end of the day, I got to the right answer eventually. And I was willing to take a loss. I think 2024 was the year where I just accepted that I am going to take massive, massive losses in my life. But that's all okay, knowing that I'm going to always get back up and go for it. I'm going to go pick up the confetti again. I'm going to get a new Roomba and do a different job, do a new thing. Try as many Roombas as it takes to get to my Roomba. Pick up my confetti and do so with grace for the rest of my life. And I'm finally at a place where I am so excited to say that and do that. So as 2024 comes to a close, 2025 on the horizon in just about 27-ish hours, I hope that you find a new Roomba, or maybe you polish up that one you got, and keep your eye on the prize, because that very thing that you want in your life might just be right in front of you, staring you right in the face. And with that, I want to say Happy New Year. Thanks for listening in 2024, and I hope this time next year we'll have a lot more listeners and be helping a lot more people. I'm very, very grateful to have this platform, as humble as it is, and I'm excited to continue on into this year and beyond. So thanks again, guys, for listening, and I'll see you next year.